to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. I don't see anyone online or in the audience for public participation. And since we're going to take things a little bit out of order so that we can get as many people out of here as quickly as possible. And since the Historical Commission got here first, you guys are up.
I knew it.
You win. It pays to be on time.
Really? What number is that?
All right, and we have Joyce Fay with us here today. And please introduce yourself.
Mary Nolte.
Mary Nolte, very good. Thank you, Mary. Do we have a subcommittee report, Brad?
We do.
Excellent.
So we caught up with what's going. There's a lot going on over at the Historical Commission. Good news is their 4-year project to repair gravestones in the old burial ground is being completed this summer. So they're not requesting additional funds in FY25. In its place, they've got a project, and this is kind of cool. They can tell us a little more about this. They're going to perform a radar survey of the burial ground to search for unmarked graves, because they know of people buried in there, but not quite sure where.
Both interesting and scary.
And so I did ask the question, what do they receive signals on? And it's actually a function of how the ground is compacted. So there'll be loose soil in the relevant sizes. So they will be conducting that this year and have asked for funds along those lines. There are also plans to reprint a couple of publications they've had available for years now, the historical homes in Burlington, as well as they've got a trifold on historical locations around town. They have been paying from their funds on the storage pod that's behind the museum. They're now going to wrap that into their budget and carry the full cost there. And here's another good story. So there was a 4-panel
Story time.
There was a 4-panel mural over in the Human Services building that was removed. How long ago? A long time.
Yeah, at least 10 years, I think. 10 years anyway.
All right. And so there are plans to actually. So it was a mural. So they actually had to cut out the plaster and cut it into sections. So the plan is to use money in the budget to fix the mural and put it in a frame. And now the search is on for where to display the mural, but. That's in the works. So their budget request is for $10,024. That's an increase of only $24 over last year. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Thank you. Would you like to add to that, Joyce?
Yes. You got to talk into this. Brad, he spoke about most of all the things that we're doing, but one of them is this booklet of historic homes, and we printed this quite a few years ago, and probably at that time, Lisa Plato was here in the archives, and with a combination of other people from the Historical Commission, and that it didn't cost a lot, only probably for the paper and the things that they used. This time we're having a printer print 2,000 copies, and we want to change a little bit about it, the front page, and there are a number of houses that have been demolished and are no longer in the book. But it's a nice little book for people to find out about the historic properties in town, and without having to go into the Fogelberg book and look for them. We wanted to have it already for the birthday celebration, but it's been a bigger project than we thought, and because we we've put the money in for the 2025 budget, then I think it best to wait until July and then have the printer do it at that time. I'd be happy to pass the booklet around if you've never seen it. We don't have a large amount. We don't have any, I don't think, only a few left to,
Just one, and then we have one that's all marked up.
right.
We've been working with Mr. Rob Costa. You familiar with Rob? Longtime history teacher in Burlington. And not a lot of changes, but most of the work is pretty obvious. We're not going to take out the names of the people that did the original. We're not changing that. We're just updating it with a little note, you know, it's for the 225th celebration, updating it. And you can't see from here, but this is a lot of work in this book, a lot of history in this little booklet, and there's also a map that shows you if you want to look at those houses. But a lot of work went into this, and we don't want to just let it go.
How do you get them? You buy them?
No. Ooh, go ahead.
We're having them printed. It's expensive. So for the 225th, we did these trifolds. I saw people leaving the birthday party, and a lot of people were carrying it. And maybe we haven't done enough of presenting what the Historical Commission does. And that's another way is to get more people to perhaps be excited about joining, because we're aging out, and it's like other groups, to get people in would be wonderful. So I'm going to leave some of these and hope you all look at them. They're pretty nice.
So we printed some of those for the birthday party, which we passed out, and then this other, the trifold, and we've asked for money to print 1,000 of them so that we'll have enough so that we can give to, anybody in town who wants them. And at the next celebrations that we have, one of the things we're doing for the 225th is we're going to have a trolley come in August for the, I think it's Burlington Day that they have. So the trolley will leave the center of town and go by all the historical places that go between here and the Francis Wyman House. We'll point them out and explain the history, and then the trolley won't be stopping to let people off, but if then people want to visit those sites, they can go back and do that after they get back. The trolley will make 2 runs, one in the morning or when it gets here at around 11, and the other one in the afternoon at 2. So hopefully it'll all work out and we won't have 5,000 people wanting to ride on a trolley. So I don't know. Or maybe we will. That will be good.
A good problem to have.
Yeah. Brad talked about the radar thing that we want to do at the burial ground, which is going to lead us to having a place in the back of the burial ground where we can have a little garden type place with maybe a small stone that would represent all the people that are buried there but don't have a stone, and even maybe a bench or something. So if you have any other questions, Mary would love to answer them.
Sounds great.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to let you know that the Beatles are coming a week from tomorrow to the Burlington, not the commission, but the society, but we're all historical.
They're historical
And
enough.
I'm wondering if anybody knows Fran Hart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you?
Of course, he was a police chief.
So the senior center's going to be jumping a week from Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. A lot going on there, obviously. Do we have questions for Historical Commission? Mike?
So you mentioned historical houses. Do you, just to widen it a little bit, historical buildings in general, do you know how many are left in Burlington?
I don't have it in front of me, but I do, when houses are demolished, I get that through the town and make sure they're not 100 years old or over, almost all the they're the target for tear downs.
We did compile a list of all the houses that were over 100 years old, and
I don't have it in front of
we
me.
don't have those figures right in front of us, but, yeah.
Well, like ballpark, 15 or 20?
Oh, no,
This-
there's probably more like 100 something.
Yeah, there's a lot of houses, yeah,
But
yeah,
they're all not historical, something that you'd want to say.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, a
Yeah.
lot of them have gone to the cottages or that, so, but they do have to be checked.
Okay.
And they're on, there's about 150.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Dave?
And then just a quick question, the storage pad rental has gone up a lot. Are you doing a specific project, or
I'm sorry.
is this a specific project that you're needing the additional storage pod?
Yes, yeah, we have in the making of the process of building a shed out beside the West School over on Bedford Street over by St. Malachy's, the little West School there, and there's enough land on that piece to put a shed, and we're trying to do it in the replica of the way the blacksmith shop was on the common, and I guess because it's a little oversized or a little bigger than a shed that you might have in your backyard, all of a sudden it's running into like building a house, not quite like that, but it is running into a little bit more problems because of the size. It will be a shed for storage of some of our larger items that we have, like the school bus thing and some other things, but it won't be a building where the children will go in, and they'll just be able to look at the things, and you'll be able to bring them out and show them. But we are desperate for storage because we don't have enough place in the museum to store the articles. Yeah.
I'd like, so it's the rental, so.
Oh, no.
Do you want to add to that, Brad, or?
Yeah. So.
Oh, you're
so it's
talking
on-
about
on
the
storage
pod. Oh,
pod.
I'm
So my
sorry, yeah,
understanding is
yeah,
You guys are
yeah.
paying for that out of.
We are,
Out of
yeah,
your.
yeah, I didn't mean to get into the other.
commission's funds.
Yeah.
And it's actually closer to $170 or so a month. So the amount in this year's budget reflects the actual cost. It made sense to put it into their operating.
So this will be recurring until
Shed us
you get the shed down at the West School.
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
We're trying to empty the museum of some of the bigger things, little by little. And now the pod, the piece that was out there, what was Peter's,
Oh, we had a sleigh,
he put that in there so it took a lot of the wood.
this,
But we're working on that.
it was all restored. It was the sleigh that was on the piece of property that was on Sear Street. You might have seen it at Christmas time. They used to put it out there. Well, they donated it to us, but it was in bad need of repair. The leather part and a lot of the wood was all rotted and everything. So out of our budget, we have paid to have that restored, and it came out beautiful. But it's a piece that you wouldn't want to put out in the weather because it's just going to get all wrecked again. And we purchased one of those, like a top garage that it could be in. And unfortunately, we had some bad wind last week, and it just ripped it all to pieces, and now we have nothing to put over it. So Peter and Andy put it in the storage shed for now, but we're going to try to find a place that it can go and be covered outside, you know. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the Historical Commission budget.
Thank you. All right, this is for the Historical Commission budget of $10,024. I believe we have everyone here, so we can do it by a show of hands. So those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 1400. Thank you very much for joining us.
thank you very much.
Good luck. Yeah.
May I leave these here?
Absolutely.
That would be great, yeah.
Is that available online also, or?
No.
Nope.
Very special people.
Fair enough. Always keep them wanting more. All right. Looks like we have Youth and Family Services here, so we'll go on to that. Department Head Christine Sharan is with us, and this is budget 549. Do we have a subcommittee report, Brad?
We do. The budget is straightforward this year. There is an increase to salaries from steps. Note that around $31,000 of the salary amount is covered by grant. Is that the ARPA grant?
That's the federal grant.
Okay, the federal grant, all right. They've now explicitly put the cell phone charge into the budget at $450. The remainder of the budget is level funded. The budget request is for $560,702. That's an increase of $17,880 or 3.29%. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Very good. Welcome. Would you like to add anything to that report?
No, not at this stage, thank you.
Okay. Do we have questions on this budget?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yep, go ahead, Chris.
Super fast. With the potential
Thank you,
leadership
got it.
change, how do we plan to continue the great work that's been done?
Yes.
And making sure that that stays current? Sorry, stays current.
Yes, actually, one of my staff, I'm going to be training to move into this position. The clinical supervisor will move into the director position. Yeah.
My motion's on the floor, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second already. This is for the Youth and Family Services budget of $560,702. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 14-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine.
All right. Who else do we have here today? Oh, and the town clerk has arrived just on time. We would be delighted to have you join us up front, Amy. All right, we have town clerk Amy Warfield with us. This is for the town clerk budget at 161. Do we have a subcommittee report, Brad?
Yes. Again, the budget is straightforward with the nuance that many of us have seen over the years. So the salaries in the town clerk's office increased by contract. There's a request for an additional $1,000 toward the preservation of historical documents. And then the nuance is there's a big jump in the budget, but only because there are 3 elections in FY25 as compared to only 2 elections in FY24. That additional election bumps that line item up $30,464. Otherwise, the rest of the budget is level funded. The total budget request is for $567,059, which is an increase of $42,928 or 8.19%. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Great. Welcome. Would you like to add anything to that?
Nope, that's pretty much the
Your narrators are too
budget
compelling.
in a nutshell.
Very good. Do we have questions regarding the town clerk budget? Frank?
Just an informational thing, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So is there any change, Amy, in any of the voting equipment this year?
No, we bought new equipment back in 2022, and usually we get at least 7 to 8 years out of them.
Are there any software updates or that sort of stuff?
That's all included in the maintenance fee that I pay every year.
Okay, so your experience with it is already there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we were able, with the previous generation of machines, we actually went from, the first ones were bought in 2007, and they ran until 2021. So it's basically an optical scanner. The biggest thing that usually gets repaired is things like the mechanical part that feeds the ballot in and that type of stuff.
It's just so much scrutiny over, a ballot's counted properly and all of that, so
Yeah.
the machines obviously play a big role in this.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, that I don't know if you're aware of, in Massachusetts, we're required to do what's called a machine test. So we get the cards from the vendor, the programmed cards. They get put into the machine. And in fact, we're going to do it tomorrow morning if you want to come visit. We have to run 50 ballots through each one of the machines. I mark them all, the ballots up, we feed them through, we audit the
result.
tape that comes out with what I had put in. And so it's one of the fail-safe kind of things in Massachusetts that we do test every machine before it goes over to the polls.
Great.
And again, what time is that tomorrow, Amy?
9 a.m. if you want to come.
Mark your calendars.
That's right.
It's coffee and ballots, not donuts.
Additional questions? Chris?
So I just had a curiosity question with your expertise. So local elections, we can have somewhat say over when the time starts. Who would set that here in town if we wanted to ever pursue going from 8 to maybe 7 or whatnot?
Actually, that's something that the Board of Registrars would set. Sometimes towns have looked at cutting those hours back. We are required, a town our size, I believe, has to open no later than 10 a.m. For a town election, and we have to close at 8. So there are some state regulations about it, but the Board of Registrars is the one that would make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
I just always find it interesting because presidential 6, state 7 roughly, we're 8, and so
Yeah.
for voters trying to, sometimes they need the earlier time slots. Of course, now we have early voting, mail-in voting, so we have better access, but something I've wondered.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we've talked about in the Board of Registrars in the past. The problem is, even with vote by mail, there are some people that say, I want to get here, I want to vote in person, and I want to get here at 8 o'clock and vote Saturday morning. So, how do you, can't please everybody, but we try.
I'll put in a small pitch. There is both vote by mail and early voting available, and there's signs out front right now about it. So
Yep, they are available. Vote by mail, they can request a ballot until Monday, April 1st. It's 4 days before the close of vote by mail that they have to request one. Voter registration actually closed today for the election. It's 10 days before. And then early voting in person, we will be doing regular business hours the rest of this week and all the way through next week until noon on Friday.
I had a question. On the, there's a few items with microfilming in there. Is there any new microfilm being generated, or is that just dealing with past microfilm?
Well, we're in the process of looking at, and that's one of the reasons why we increased that historical document. We're looking at some other options rather than microfilm in terms of maybe just scanning and having it digitally. We have a microfilm reader, we do maintain it, we do have a lot of microfilm already ourselves. It's one of those items that, one of those kind of technologies that has changed so much. I tend to prefer to have things digitally. And a lot of places the microfilm is almost the lost leader. They'll do the microfilm while they're doing the digitizing, and if you request it, it's a few dollars more to get microfilm, so. Yeah, microfilm or microfiche. We have a lot of microfiche too.
Okay. Do we have additional questions?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is for the town clerk budget of $567,059. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, that's 1400. we'll go right into Board of Registrars, which is account 162. Do we have a subcommittee report, Brad?
Yes. So again, this is reasonably straightforward. There are only two changes. There is a new stipend added for a deputy registrar in the amount of $2,000. So Amy will probably has appointed someone in her office for those duties. And the reason for the additional money is there's a non-trivial workload tied to the work there. There's also a request for an additional $1,500 for postage for the census mailers. So the total budget request is $16,650. That's an increase of $3,500, or 26.62%. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Would you like to add to that?
No, that again is basically it. Dealing with the vote by mail and the management of that, I'm looking to put in some additional money for having a deputy registrar assigned by the Board of Registrars, somebody that would just manage all of that additional work, to take that off of my plate in terms of, I'd work with that person, but somebody in my office to do that.
Are you the registrar? Or?
I'm also a registrar.
Okay.
As a town clerk, I'm on the Board of Registrars as well.
Do we have questions? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Amy, on the stipend for that individual, it says will be an appointment of the town clerk at the Board of Registrars, and it's a yearly appointment.
Yeah.
So are you worried about continuity? You have to train the person, right?
Right. Well, we made it a yearly appointment just so that any transition that happens going forward, but it's usually going to be somebody in the office who's been trained on what those, dealing with all this stuff. So you think the appointment would most likely come from within? Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Because that person does have to have access to the state machine, the state system, and that kind of stuff, which is a limited
access,
user.
They need to know a lot. Okay, thank you.
And then the other thing that's a piece of this is obviously is just dealing with doing the census form. I mean, we'd all like to have the census go totally electronic. At least what I've been able to get done is that you can return it electronically, but state law still requires us to mail out to every resident a census every year. So the cost of printing that, it's produced out of house in terms of the folding and mailing, but postage costs also have gone up, so.
Well, thank goodness you don't have to fax it at least. Frank?
They have a fax machine. Do you, Amy?
What?
You have a fax machine?
We still have a fax machine, yes. We have to because of vital records. There's vital records stuff that has to be
This is kind of an inside
faxed.
joke. All right.
Oh, okay. I know. Hey, it still uses a regular phone line. It's not even voice over IP.
All seriousness, what's the process that you update the registered voter list, the inventory? How do you keep up with that? Is it done every year or not?
Oh, yeah. It's done, and this is one of the unique things about Massachusetts. We're the only state left in the union that does an annual census. So when the census forms go out, if someone marks off that a child has moved out or people have moved out or they've got new people, we basically take that information, put it into the state system, and mark if somebody is left or moved as having been inactivated. We have to send out a postcard to the original address, and if that postcard comes back with another address saying forwarding, we send out another letter to that second address. We need to be able to remove a voter, we need to have the signature of the voter, or it has to go through 2 federal election cycles, and then we can actually delete them.
Yeah, I'm asking because it seems like there's quite a lag. So it's all driven from the census. If that comes back inaccurately, it's going to be inaccurate.
Well, but we also do things like make sure we check things like business certificates. One of the other places that we catch people from a lot of times are dog licenses, because they move out of town, and when we're charging them for a dog license, they say, I don't live in Burlington anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's update
All
this,
right.
and let's send you a
So
card.
It's
So
a bit of an inspector kudos.
there's a lot of steps in it, and a lot of manual work with it to be able to keep it accurate. But it's one of the things that I've always taken great pride in, is that in both the federal census of 2010 and the federal census of 2020, we were less than 200 people different than what the federal census came back as. So I think that we're mapping pretty close to
Lot of
what's
work. Thank you.
reality.
Guessing yours is more accurate.
I don't know, we're a little more, probably every year we're a little more accurate, so.
All right, I'm afraid to ask this question, but I will.
Sorry.
On your cover sheet, it says that the registrar shouldn't hold any other office in the city.
They can't hold any other elected office by state law.
Right, so wouldn't that exclude you then, or?
No, because the state law includes the clerk on the board of registrars.
The clerk is allowed to be,
Yeah.
okay, great.
The clerk is allowed to be, yes.
Just wanted to make
It's
sure.
the one unique position.
Wanted to make sure we weren't running into an
No,
issue
no.
here where all our elections are
I think I would have
invalidated
run across
somehow.
that a long time before. Yeah. But thanks for checking.
Great. I knew you'd be
That'd
careful.
be awkward if the answer was no right now.
Yeah, that'd be real awkward.
That's why I was afraid to
I get to
ask.
throw myself out.
Any other proving questions?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Thank you. All right, this is for the Board of Registrars budget of $16,650. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain? That's 1400. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's get that one down here. Very good. All right, do we have the Board of Appeals here yet? Okay, all right, we'll go right into DPW then, please. I think I saw Brian White behind the TV and Rachel Leonardo with him. Yes, great, okay, come on up. And do we have a subcommittee report, Roger?
Well, naturally.
Excellent.
Sonia and I spent some time with Brian and Rachel at the end of February talking about the budget, and as you can see from the number of departments, there's always a lot to talk about. Just the high-level stuff is the budget is up to, it's up 5.18%, based primarily on, actually everything, materials and supplies, contractual obligations, some unexpected things. We'll talk about the accommodated a little bit. That's up 4.1% as well. A lot of the operations around Mill Pond and the PFAS filters have contributed both in terms of materials and supplies and operating costs, occupancy costs, to the increases. Just a little bit of background about water in Burlington. So water's produced both from the MWA, well, not produced, but piped from the MWA and from Mill Pond. And by agreement with the Massachusetts Water Resources Commission, we have to use the Mill Pond water first before MWA water. So we can't just sort of slack off and not use that. The cost of the water between MWA and Mill Pond are about the same, but as the new PFAS filters come online and we actually settle down into a routine about replacing the filter media and all the costs associated with that, we'll come to a better understanding about the relative costs. It would hope that they would be cheaper than MWRA, but that's a different story. The water, a couple of things around the water, and actually a bunch of this has already been said in front of the select board, so people know about it. The water rates have been increased in part due to a drop in the commercial use. And since the commercial side of town uses more water and they pay more for water than from residential, there's the goal of meeting the costs of water production has been somewhat missed. I guess it was 7 or 8 years ago, or maybe less than that, we created a a way to bridge between the previous water rates and the water rates we were going to have to pay with the MWRA by means of setting aside some money every year into a fund, stabilization fund. And because of the drop-off in water payments, that fund has not been keeping up with the estimates. And that was one of the things that caused the water rates to get reevaluated and updated, with an eye toward getting back on track with the stabilization fund. But as always, we're still using funds from the general fund to fund, in part, the water production and water delivery. So the water rates that you pay on your water bill don't cover the whole cost of water. And that's always been a topic, and I'm sure we'll talk about it some more. Other things that you'll notice in the budgets, Rachel did a pretty good job of reviewing overtime accounts and some part-time staffing and materials and supplies things with an eye toward setting the overtime budgets more realistically with what actually has been used. They typically have been overrunning the budgets, and it was time to do a look back and reevaluate it. So you'll see higher numbers in most of the overtime budgets, but that represents a more realistic view of what has to be expended. There was one shift, I guess, in the cemetery department. There was some part-time money for part-time work that they were having difficulty actually finding people to fill in the part-time positions. And so they moved some of the part-time money to the overtime budgets, but to sort of level things out. Bits and pieces along with the water billing. The MWA requires billing quarterly instead of every 6 months a year, so there's a little bit more work, more postage, and supplies of envelopes, not surprisingly. In the highway department, there's capital outlay to include to buy a trailer and to replace a trailer. One of the trailers is for the traffic personnel when they go out to do work. They have equipment, ladders, and stuff to take with them, and it's easier if there's a trailer to put that stuff on and leave it on as opposed to loading and unloading the truck. One interesting detail is the amount of gravel, and the cost of gravel is the estimate that raised this year. It turns out they use a lot of gravel when there's water emergencies and they have to dig up the street and fill it back in again. There's more money for catch basin cleanings. There are 2,800 catch basins and 12 interceptor basins, which are giant ones. I guess Rachel calls them or Brian calls them on steroids, catch basins on steroids. Interesting.
It gets the point across.
Yes, yes, it's direct, right. This year, the snow and ice budget, we started out at $350K, and it's lower than usual, but the select board did raise it by, I think, $150K recently to cover the recent stored. More?
200.
200, okay. But that's one of the accounts that actually can be carried over from year to year by state, allowed in the state rules. Water and sewer, I mentioned that materials and supplies are up. There's a new set of filters in front of the PFAS filters to remove, I assume, particulates that have to get changed every month or so, and there's a $60K in the budget increase for that. And there's more money in the fire hydrant replacements are up, costs are up, so that was noted. Every other year, there's a dam inspection required at the mill pond, and this is the year for that $10,000 expense. And a bunch of other expenses in lab equipment and repair of everything costs have gone up. And I will let Sonia fill in if she'd like, and then I think both Brian and Rachel will have things to say. The subcommittee voted to support the budget 2-0.
Great.
The operating budget.
did you want to add to that, Sonia?
That was as thorough as it could be, Mr. Chairman.
You've done it again.
I left a few things out, I'm sure. Not all the details are interesting.
Brian or Rachel, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add a couple more notes. So you'll see on the summary page, we have a slight increase in our occupancy line item, and that's twofold. Part one is we now have a full year's worth of data for our One Great Meadow Road building, which is highway and water and sewer. We didn't have a full year before, so now we can appropriately estimate the electric and gas usage on that. And then the other part is that we have one single electric and gas meter each at Mill Pond, and that now includes the facility that hosts the PFAS filters. So we don't have a full year of that, as it's only been running, full month was August. So we're kind of guesstimating on that, but we did have to increase. We've seen a couple months come in, and it has been higher than before those filters were installed and up and running to heat and cool that building. Roger, really talked about the large items that you're going to see that's causing a lot of increases. So a couple other small things. We have new employees, which means new license reimbursements, so that causes that increase in our MELT account that you see. And then if you go down to our special accounts, we have a line item for well cleaning and sludge removal. It's really eventually should be rebranded to just sludge removal, since we're going to be decommissioning all the wells, as well as the Vinebrook treatment plant. So we do 2 large sludge hauls annually, $65,000 a haul, so we had to increase that from $120,000 to $130,000. And gravel, as Roger mentioned, that comes out of Highway 1, which is causing like a 16.5% increase there. The single line item within Highway 1 for gravel historically is only $4,000. We're seeing $15,000 to $30,000 a year. We had to increase it. And on the opposite end, we decreased some of the money in sign and lane painting to kind of balance that out a bit. And the reason that we can do that is we're now including thermo striping in the roads in our paving contracts. We used to do that after the fact. It would be separate, and now we're just kind of encompassing all into one big pot. The last thing I want to mention is physical exams going up 7.5%. We had to switch vendors. This is for our DOT random testing, and the vendor itself, it's a little more expensive per test, but they also offer a really convenient feature where they'll come and hang out in the annex basement and knock out a bunch of randoms all at once, so it's less disruptive to the workday for the employees. Anything else?
Covered it. Great, thank you. Do we have questions? Oh, sorry. Hi, Mike.
Sorry.
Mike?
So I thought I'd have to wait to ask this, but such an interesting question. You mentioned sludge hauls. Could you explain those a little bit?
So catch basin cleanings, the residuals, and there's also residuals coming out of the plant. Right now, I'm pretty sure they're all stored up at the Mill Pond treatment plant, and DEP requires us to haul them away.
And so does that sludge come out of the reservoir, or is it coming out of somewhere else?
So that comes out of the treatment process. During the treatment process, there's a coagulation that goes on that basically helps particles settle out throughout the, then that gets pumped up. If you ever walk around the reservoir, you'll see two lagoons, 2 big lagoons.
Yeah.
So it pumps the sludge from, that's settled out throughout the treatment process up to those. They're supposed to dry out there. Once they dry out, we mix them with catch basin cleanings and can dispose of them at a landfill per DEP requirements.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious because I had seen those catch basins, but I didn't know what they were for. Okay, thank you.
David?
How are you doing staffing-wise? Fully staffed, people that are coming in and out? What's the market like for replacements?
So we are much better than we have been in the last couple of years. We had a few people leave / get promoted. So we do have, we were for several months pretty fully staffed outside of our operations manager. We're actually in the process of filling that. And we have one opening in our central maintenance division and one opening in our highway division. So I think some of the things that the administration has done in the last year to try to get, when the CDL license, the CDL class was mandated by the feds, which is a $4,500 cost out of nowhere for people. We worked some things out, and that seemed to really help fill those positions. We've successfully got trained 3 people through that.
Thanks. I'll throw a few questions in here. Or do you have one, Frank?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. He had a list going here. I thought we were in for it. You dodged that bullet. Two questions. First one is a curiosity. It says in here that because of drought conditions, Mill Pond, and it does, it gets very low, and that we had to pump MWRA into Mill Pond to replenish the appropriate levels in the reservoir. Can you fill me in a little bit there? Why in the world would we do that?
So we didn't pump the MWRA into Mill Pond. As you remember, 2022 was a drought in very low levels.
Right.
So as we were approaching, we didn't finish that. We weren't sure when if the MWRA project in Lexington, when that would finish. So we were able to increase flows and start taking additional flow earlier in the spring.
From Shawsheen?
From MWRA. So we were buying more water from
and
MWRA.
Put it into Mill Pond to hold it.
So that we could help. So basically MWRA water would supply the town.
All right.
We'd use less at Mill Pond so we could try to.
So the drift of my question was, why in the world would we pay the MWRA, just buy it straight from them and leave Mill Pond low? Because you can always get it from the MWRA.
Yeah, we couldn't, well, the issue was, again, so even with Phase 2A complete, it can't handle the peak summer days.
All right.
So, and we weren't sure when Phase 2A would actually complete. Fortunately, it completed around July, August. So, but in prep of that, if there was delays,
you could have a shortage.
We'd have, yeah.
All right, so that was just a curiosity.
All right, just to be clear, no water went from MWRA into the reservoir, is what I just heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Impossible.
All right, now for the harder question. So this water usage on the commercial side, what we experienced is a drop in the gallonage that the commercial side was using of water. Do you know sort of the driving forces in that? And I can think of 2, occupancy and more efficiencies in their buildings. What's going on there?
So it drops. It seems to be pretty consistent year to year ever since COVID. COVID was when the real hit happened, and ever since we've kind of been at 90% of where we thought we would be. Every year we're short 10%.
So you don't think it's efficiencies in the buildings, you think it's population in the building?
Yeah, I think the office buildings were the ones that had the significant impact. I mean, the efficiencies have contributed to it over the years, but I think that's tending more to the slight downtrend in water consumption, but not as significant.
So my mental model on this thing is, in the beginning, when we started to really transition to new build-outs and new buildings, all new plumbing, fixtures, blah, blah, blahs were put in and used up way less water than the old buildings. And so our consumption actually dropped, even though our number of active people using water was going up. And we did really well on that. That's probably run its course, more or less. So these drops are probably just not as many people in the buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you adjusted the water rates, so the commercial side rate is higher than the residential side? And so when you adjusted the rates, did they go up for everybody? Commercial and residential?
Yes.
Yep, so they were 9.8% for across the board for all the different accounts.
You have to know the ratio on a per gallon basis. If I were to take a fully loaded cost of a gallon of water, how much of that does the commercial side cover on their rates, and how much does the residential side cover with our rates?
So,
Say a gallon costs $10,
yep.
right? Does the commercial side pay $9, $8, $10?
So the commercial revenues make up about 2/3 to 70% of the total revenue brought in for water and sewer combined.
Okay,
So
it's
they're making,
1/3, and those 3/3 cover less than the whole percentage of what we actually pay, and we cover the rest with the operating budget. I think is where we're at.
I believe so, if I'm following you correctly, yep. So it's similar to the split tax rate. I mean, the commercial shoulders
To the, yeah.
a good amount. of
Okay, so it's
revenue.
along those lines of a ratio. Okay. Do you see any, so we're in the process here of we're only putting in about, I'd say roughly 40 big new homes a year residentially. The thing that's making the residential water consumption go up, if it's still going up, I believe, was outdoor usage, irrigation. On the commercial side, do you have a model that says if we build this much, if we refit up, if we do, new labs, if we open up another 50 acres of commercial, you have a pretty good handle on how much water usage we should anticipate there?
So,
They're gonna tell us, right? They have to
yeah.
predict what it is, but I'd like to know what we think.
I think it's tough to forecast if the focus is shifting to biotech and labs. We've seen it because we also have to kind of monitor it in regards to sewer allocation when we calculate that and usage. And the labs are kind of all over the place depending on the type of lab. So you might have I believe one of the 3D printing places that might be an R&D type lab that just doesn't use any water. It's much closer to an office building. So we're finding a lot of the labs are office, more in line with a typical office space, but then you end up getting some more that might be more in like the pharmaceutical production side that is using a lot. AMRI on South Bedford is one. So it really depends, I think, on what type of lab.
But the idea is, because we've got double coverage, when Mill Pond is at its capacity, then we can get all the balance from MWRA, so we're not as concerned about an uptick in water consumption going forward as we used to be anyway.
Yeah, so we're also going to be proposing, in April, we'll be in front of you. We're asking there's a warrant article to fund Phase 2B of the MWRA.
Right, that'd get us to the 6 million a day or something.
Yeah, so, but as we stand now, we're in a better off, we have more capacity now with Mill Pond in MWRA than we did when it was Mill Pond in Vinebrook.
Okay, and may I, Mr. Chairman, one it's probably not the last thing, but there is no end to
I never assume it is.
Yeah, there's no end to this department. I don't know if that's good or bad, but, so what's the plan for the retirement of mothballing Vinebrook?
So we have
Is there cost tied into that?
There's a cost tied into it. That's going to be part of the whole 2B warrant article request. It's, we submitted the permit request to DEP, what we hope to do. They may tell us otherwise and ask for more significant things to be done, but it would include, hauling out all the unused chemicals, basically cutting and capping. We expect that it'll involve cutting and capping. We're hoping it's...
Of the wells, you mean?
So the wells have to be decommissioned in a specific way. They have to be filled with special soils, and DEP is going to tell us exactly how to do those. And then in regards to Vinebrook itself, we're hoping they just allow us to cut and cap inside the building and disconnect it from the, they want Mill Pond, we expect they're going to want Mill Pond disconnected completely from the finished water pipe that leaves it. So that even if a pump wasn't properly decommissioned and someone flipped a switch, there's no way that's getting back into the water system.
So that's probably in 24 months we'll actually go through that?
Yeah, I tell you what, that cost of 2B is relatively low and should be able to be done fairly quick.
But would that include the decommissioning?
Yep.
I see.
Yep. So the DEP kind of looks at all of it as a whole. So the Adams Street connection, where we have the meter pit and the control valves and the pressure sensors, all of it to them is tied into this kind of, and typically it's like 2 or 3 different permits that would be required, but
Decommissioning.
they're allowing us to join them all together because they
I'm
view
worried about the borrowing and the money. These guys probably have a better handle of what that's likely to look at and when.
Yeah, and fortunate, well, again, we'll get into more details, but we were able to get entry fee waivers, if you recall. I think we mentioned it possibly last year in the MWRA. So we already had appropriated $4.6 million for the entrance fee that we got waived. So to fund 2B, we're actually just asking to repurpose that prior appropriation, so it's not.
So we didn't have to use it initially?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so when it's decommissioned, then it's out of your hands, and I guess the administration has to figure out how do we mothball it, or do we not mothball it and do something with it? And that's something that'll come up, I suppose, over the next year or so. Is that a fair statement, Paul? Paul's back there trying to not get the mic.
No, I just, thank you, Frank. One of the unfortunate things about Vinebrook is that if you looked at it on a flood map previously, it was almost like an island in the middle of a flood zone. So the building was on a solid piece of land. And in fact, most of the actual site of the plant is actually pretty solid from floodplain standpoint. But the new conservation and FEMA flood maps that are proposed now put the whole building in the 50-year storm. It puts it squarely in the flood zone. So I guess it'll still have a use to us, but we'll have to put some strong consideration into how we utilize that. Again, just from the change in the flood maps, I don't think we would want to put anything that was too vital or build anything too expensive and new there, given its new predicament of being squarely in the flood zone at that point.
To be continued. Thank you.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
What size is the fairly solid piece of land today in terms of like acreage?
Yeah, I can get back to you on that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
You have like a rough half, 1 acre?
It's probably a couple acres. It's pretty big. It doesn't look like it from the street, but when you go around the back, I'm trying to think. Yeah, you could definitely fit a few residential lots on it.
Okay.
So a couple acres, I would guess.
I wanted to follow. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Well, to step away from water for a minute. If we can, if you have more water questions.
He'll build up some while you talk.
All right. How are the new buildings functioning? So now they've been going. They're full. They've got everybody's working out of them. Everything going well.
Yeah,
they're doing everything they were supposed to do. And
the facilities have been great. From an efficiency standpoint or a functionality standpoint, from winter operations, and the no complaints from the crews about layout issues or anything along those lines.
Everything fits indoors and.
Yeah, efficiency. I think HVAC is pretty efficient as we expected.
Excellent.
Good job.
$32 million well spent.
Just wanted to check. Just wanted to make sure.
So I did want to follow up on some of the water questions, so we can get back to that, Frank. I just wanted to sort of understand, how much we are subsidizing, so I'm just curious if this analysis makes sense. When I add up the MWRA costs, the mill pond materials and supplies, the treatment plants, that's about $3 million a cost, it looks like. It looks like we're taking about $2 million from the Water Stabilization Fund to fund that. So my simple math says that $1 million is coming from the operating budget, basically, and that's the amount that we're subsidizing via the operating budget, as opposed to, ratepayers covering it. Is that the right kind of ballpark analysis, or am I missing a big number here somewhere?
Did you include the debt, the water debt in that?
I was not including that even. I was just looking at straight costs of water supply.
It was quite a while ago that I think when Mr. Sanchez was here that it was looked at, and at that time, water was about 50% subsidized by the general fund, and I think sewer was about 15% subsidized by the general fund. So we're definitely recovering more of the costs for the sewer because it's just one bill from the MWRA essentially with some other adjustments. But it was definitely, those numbers are dated, but that, I'm not sure if we've done anything significantly different to alter that formula over the years. The general funds more or less picked up a lot of the debt end of things and a portion of some of the other costs. But at that time, it was about 50% water and 15% sewer, going back over 10 years ago, I would say.
Okay, all right, so that's sort of in the same ballpark at least, and, I wasn't even considering the debt, I was just looking at straight direct costs. But, okay, that's good. Getting into more, just a couple budget details. On the special accounts with the tipping and recycling, there's a couple of numbers on those lines. Is that tons and cost per ton? Is that the right way to?
Did you want to talk about?
We're doing special accounts separately, Mr. Chairman.
Good point. That's a combined account. Ignore that. We'll come back to that. Thank you. You caught me.
Stick to the water.
Back to water. No, actually, it is back to water. This is just something to do with the staffing that I wanted to. It's had an implication that I'm not sure if I understood or not. Let me see if I can find that exact line. It was something. I'll look it up, but just. There's something it said about level staffing down 62. It's down about 62,000, and it references overtime in some way that I didn't quite follow. And I realize that's not a very helpful description until I can find the water and sewer budget here. Here we go. Let's see if I can find the exact line I'm talking about now.
Is it the part-time versus seasonal?
Yeah, it's the water and sewer subdivision of the budget. I apologize. Here we go. So it's on, it's under overtime on the water and sewer breakdown. And there's a line that says level staff, reduced capacity OT. All right, you see what I'm looking at, or? It's on the page with all the salaries for water and sewer near the bottom.
Second page of 451.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it went from 112 to 50K, and I'm curious if this indicates some overtime mitigation plan that I'm not aware of or something. Are you able to find that, or?
Yeah, so okay. I think it's just that's where when Rachel, I think maybe, or maybe it was Roger, touched on at the beginning when we did an overtime analysis and tried to look at all the hours. Those are the line items where that ends up in, and so we looked at the last 5 years of how many hours is needed to provide the services. In addition, we've been noticing bigger water breaks recently as well. So we adjusted, and on top of that, whenever you have the full-time contract adjustments, it's going to affect overtime budget as well. So if there's cost of living increases and things in person's salary, that's going to also be affected in the overtime. So I think that's, if I'm following you correct, of why that.
This is one that got cut in half, though. All the other overtime-related things went up by like, 9 to 20%. That's why this one struck me as interesting.
So programmed versus not anticipated is kind of what we analyze. So programmed overtime is what you can expect to happen, people are on vacation, weekend and holiday coverage, vacation coverage. We also kind of consider if we have to do any night flushing, we can budget for it ahead of time. And it's the water breaks that is the not anticipated overtime. So that's where we kind of reallocated some of the money and added to it to make it a more accurate representation of how water and sewer's overtime is used. So that's how we justify, we cut what we know and expect because they are fully staffed and they have been for a full year. And we don't know what's gonna happen, so we need to put more money into the unknown.
Oh, okay, so it's because we're fully staffed is the big change that's causing that programmed overtime to go down. Okay,
When we were
great.
not fully staffed, we had a lot of, employees working like incredible amounts of overtime to make up for that gap. And in water treatment as well. Now, we're down to one plant. So we were able to reallocate a treatment plant operator into a full-time custodian as well. Now that we have 2 new buildings that need to be cleaned, so.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, do we have additional questions? Back to order, Frank?
One other thing, you reminded me of it. Water main, water line breaks. So I've asked this question before, and your answer is that the level of unanticipated breakage that we see is kind of typical. In other words, you can't predict it, but you sort of can statistically. But anecdotally, I just feel like we're seeing more and more severe breaks than in say, the last, 3 years than we did in the previous decade. Is that just not a realistic opinion?
No, I think I think they have been higher break years, for sure. Gravel is a good indicator of that, and why the gravel price is going up.
So it leads to the question of, we've cambered, I think, all of our mains within the last 5 years.
Sewer.
Oh, sewer only?
Yeah, water.
Okay, so that then really begs the question, how do we assess the condition of our mains in order to sort of get ahead of the breaks? Or, when they happen, they're not only is it sort of an emergency to go fix it, but it can cause some real disruption to whoever service it is. And if they're really kicking up in frequency, maybe the high life of the longevity of the lines is we've actually started to hit it more than we thought we were. You got any views on that?
I think the issue with water versus sewer is very easy to trenchlessly and cheaply rehab, versus water is very expensive. And I think over the years prior to me, when we came up with the water bond every other year, John, Tom Hayes, and Paul sat down and came up with kind of how much money could we realistically invest in water main replacement, given how expensive.
So what I'm asking, though, is what's the condition of the mains? Whether we want to put the money into them or not in an anticipatory way, maybe we don't have a choice, so we're getting closer and closer to when you don't have a choice. I don't know the mileage of how many mains have been, not rehabbed or replaced, and what the average life of them is, but we must be getting a lot of mileage that's getting closer to high time. I'm just guessing here, but that's a real issue. Have we looked at that?
Yeah, so when we dig them up, it's a lot of times the breaks, the pipe's actually in pretty good condition. The AC pipe holds up pretty well.
It's the gravel underneath.
It's either the poor backfill with rocks, but a lot of it's also tied to paving. So the more paving that we end up doing, and the compaction and the disturbance on top, that causes the forces on the pipe.
So is there anything that we should think about doing differently here?
Yeah, the only alternative is in the industry is kind of trying to line water mains, but you run into similar issues. One, there, you know, with all the things that are in that EP's pinpointing and plastics or something else, it's also.
Running cameras down the lines isn't going to do us any good, is what you're really saying. The pipe is in fine shape, it's everything around it, so frost heaves, settling, whatnot, and we get the breaks.
Yeah, I think we've been facing more breaks, but I think it's, you know, it's not at a breaking point that we can't handle them as a dig and repair. So, I mean, I think at this point we're still in a pretty efficient process.
Frank, I would just also say that I think Tom Hayes does have an inventory essentially by age. So if that's a way to sort of judge the system, he generally knows how old a line is prior to us replacing it at a minimum. So we can sort of lay the town out in that fashion based upon the age of the age.
Do you think he sort of does that periodically anyway?
Well, we do have the water line replacement bond every other year, so they do invest in the water mains, probably like everything else, not as much as we would if we had all the money in the world, but there is an investment program in it.
All right, so that's great. My message would be, if the annual, or I think it's a biannual investment, if I'm
biannual, yes.
Right. If you think at some point that isn't sufficient to keep up, you need to tell us, because when you get these breaks, it's a disaster for you, certainly. I mean, you never know how bad it's going to be. So we'd like to not have as much. We don't want the frequency any higher. So you need to let us know, I think.
Yeah, sure. And to Paul's point, we track every break that we go on. We track. We have a it's on tablets. So and it's a special tracking app that we use. So all the breaks get
analyzed,
documented,
yeah.
And so our engineering division is constantly, when we're looking at how to use that water bond to spend, we're looking at roads that have high multiple frequencies of breaks. So that'll be an indicator that possibly that section of pipe is poor versus if it's just a random break here and there, it's, you know, it's.
All right, that's good. I appreciate it, and I don't want to take up the whole meeting on water break analysis, but it does occur to me.
Too late.
What could be more fascinating?
Oh, yeah.
Roger.
Ground penetrating radar. We're using the cemetery to find soft spots. Sorry.
While we've got it, might as well.
If you can find the places, if the problem with piping and water main breaks is actually poor soil conditions around the mains, maybe there's a way to spot it ahead of time. But it's probably something for future investigation.
Yeah.
You can also find the old bodies at the same time that way.
I don't usually bury mine next to the water mains.
Yeah, be too careful.
Do you want a motion to approve?
That'd be great.
Second.
I think we're at that point. Thank you. This is for the DPW budget of operating budget of $11,285,109. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Good. All right. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain. All right. That's 1400. All right. So now on to trash removal, please, the accommodated account.
But first, the easy ones.
Oh,
There are
sorry.
3 accommodated accounts.
Whatever order you want, Roger.
The 3 accommodated accounts, street lights, rubbish, and drinking water. So the street lights, is a program we put in place years ago to replace all the street lights. It's got, we're going to keep paying $360,500 until 2027, so just a few more years. And it's pretty cut and dry. Do we want to vote these one at a time? Or?
Yeah, I think we need to. Yeah.
That's all I've got to say. Is there anything else to say about
Anything else on that?
More years.
Okay. Any questions on this?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. All right. This is for the DPW accommodated account for street lights of $360,500. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain. All right, 1400. on to your next one.
All right, so the annual DEP drinking water withdrawal assessment is $15,000 level funded. Apparently, we pay something based on the amount of water that we draw, but it's been the same amount as long as I can remember, and there's really nothing to say about it. We pay it, they let us pump water out of used water.
This is from the Shawsheen, if I recall correctly?
No, it's anywhere.
Oh, it's anywhere.
All
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Not just.
This is a state ripoff, in case you want to know.
It's chicken feed, that's the problem.
As these things go, it could be worse.
Is there anything else to add?
Yes. Okay. Any questions?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. This is for the DPW DEP accommodated account of $15,000. Raise your hand if you're in favor. Opposed? Abstained? 1400. All right. Now on to trash removal.
All right. So we're in year 2 of the trash contract, and there's the trash and recycling. There's separate hauling and tipping, which means getting, but we're in the middle of the existing contracts, and the increases are things that are already in the contract based on national CPI. So we don't have much to say about them at this point. And I don't know, maybe there's more to say. I don't think there's a lot more to say unless you start looking to the future, but.
It's a great topic.
I'll share a few things. So as Roger said, we have separate collection and disposal contracts. We're in year 2 of collection. And you had asked about the tipping fee, maybe versus recycling processing fee. So tipping fee is literally the truck tipping. It gets weighed, and it's the cost per ton that we pay. We do about 6,500 tons per year for solid waste. And then recycling processing, so we pay what's called a pass-through. The 105, it was a guesstimate. It's a max. You know, certain times of year are a little heavier. I can tell you the past 2 months have been kind of like $90, which is great. But we have seen upwards to that $105 mark in winter usually, like November, December, I would say. So as Roger mentioned, we're going off the CPI for our annual increase on the solid waste and automated single stream recycling line item that you see. We have a contractual cap of 6%, and currently we're seeing about 5.5% to 6% annually. So that's why we're putting it in at 6% as our guesstimate.
Okay. Any, questions on this? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Catch basin cleaning is under this category? Oh, that's the sludge removal?
That's another part of it that we do. Yeah, we've always had some of it living in sludge removal to help with the residuals from the lagoons, plus some of the catch basin cleanings, but the majority of it, we've been storing it separately, and that's called catch basin cleanings. It's different costs usually associated with that.
Okay, and rejected recycling loads is, if I understand this correctly, if a truck pulls in and there's anything that isn't eligible, the whole load gets ditched.
It's considered contaminated, so if somebody somehow magically gets a mattress in there, which is basically impossible now, maybe you cut it out
The whole load gets lost.
It's rejected, yeah.
Yeah, so the residents probably aren't very aware of that, but anytime they put something in there that's going to cause that truck to get spotted, we lose the tonnage of that whole truck.
We've been doing really well recently. The trash company has kind of a new management team that we've been working with, and it's been a great communication across the board. We have shared Google Drive with them as well, so they're very communicative. Anytime they see something, they're now, getting out of the truck, putting a sticker on it, taking a picture.
Letting people know. Okay, that's good, because that makes a difference. And then the last thing, the recycling processing. So you have, it says on here $105, so that's the per ton cost for whatever recycle they get. That's what we get charged.
Yes.
So the per ton cost of the recycling processing appears to be higher than the tipping fee of solid waste. So what's the incentive to put anything in recycle?
It's the law.
Say that again, Paul?
It's the law.
The law? I see.
I think these tonnage rates are actually closer than they used to be. It used to be a bigger disparity in the past, so
Absolutely.
at least now it's similar.
At some point, we actually got money back, right?
Yeah.
Well, the old days,
Or
yeah.
offset something, but
So the sale of recyclables revolving account, tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
Nothing.
So I mean, we have a separate account for when we sell second trash covers
Oh, that's what that's about.
and our overflow bags as well. We have an account that's revenue,
Okay.
and we use that to kind of offset and make it less of a harsh impact on our budget.
So the only way
Frank, in
we...
the old days, when we used to get paid on the recyclables, it used to.
Right, get fund itself.
Well,
So we have to put money in.
Typically, paper was something that we
Yeah,
would get
all right.
paid on, a cardboard.
So you have it in parentheses as not a cost, but I'm confused.
It's revenue, so we are able to subtract it as an offset.
Where's the revenue coming from?
The sale of our second trash.
The second
Oh,
bins.
because we charge for them.
We do, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, got it. Okay, good.
Okay?
Yep.
Yeah, Sonia?
So I think just to kind of clarify too, when the recycling and the trash, when we first started getting those new barrels, we were saving money because the tipping fee was higher at the time, and we were also making money back. So it was a win-win on the sale of recyclables, and we were saving money by taking it out of the tipping fee. So it was environmentally sound, and the municipality was paying less. So we were like driving people to recycle, and we were incentivizing by saying it's financially sound and economically sound.
I'm not anti-environmental.
No, I know, but I
Recycle everything
think-
we possibly can, but there's
But I
no money
think it's-
being made here.
It's very interesting because I think we all kind of still live in that world where we think we're saving by doing it. I think what we're saying now is kind of like, it's environmentally sound, but just so people understand, it's actually, unfortunately, more expensive now to recycle, so we're just in it for the good.
Well, just before anyone gets any clever ideas, it's only slightly more
Yeah, it's a
expensive.
break even.
And furthermore, I think by state law, we're required to have a certain fraction of recycling, if I understand. Is that correct?
You have to by state law, but also I think there was so much discussion. Burlington did very well. This was many years ago. Burlington was not on the forefront, I guess I'll call it, of recycling. Our percentages by comparison to municipalities around us was significantly less. We've done a very good job in kind of educating the community, getting everybody to kind of go into these two different barrels and recycling. However, it's no longer a cost factor thing as much as it's just, now this is what we do. But it's not really a cost savings mechanism anymore.
Right. We basically forced people to recycle by having a smaller barrel.
Yeah.
I think is what Sonia's trying to say.
Yeah.
Well,
I was trying to be a little more
We'll be getting
diplomatic, but there
tinier
it was.
waste barrels in the future. Chris?
It worked, that's all I want to say.
So with some people who recycle ourselves this past Christmas and not having those recycling the cardboard, we had overflow through, I don't know, probably February. So I just want to bring it back up. I know there was a lot of controversy on them being dumped in, but they were very popular for many of our citizens. And then, the question that I had is, if you can buy the overflow trash, can you buy overflow recycling? So can you buy a second recycling toter as a family here in town?
Is there question two? No. You can get a larger recycle toter swapped out free of cost. You just have to call DPW, put you on a list, and they'll come and swap it out for you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So one bin, but a bigger bin.
Yeah, it's a 95 gallon.
95 gallon.
Versus 50 or something, yeah, okay.
54, I think.
Really?
Jumbo recycling opportunity.
I mean, I know the answer because I know why we got rid of it, but, just saying, new police station, hint, hint, wink, wink, could be space there, but it was one of those great benefits, especially in the holidays, and everything comes in cardboard, to not, cut that. And if somebody has a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, everything comes in cardboard, and there just isn't space for it.
Yeah, so the abuse was one of the things we were trying to look at and try to figure out how to prevent prevent out-of-town or commercial use of, that was providing the abuse. So our thought was if we provided these larger recycling bins, perhaps that's a way that only the residents of Burlington can use it, and maybe that's sufficient enough. And so we rolled out that plan and see what kind of feedback we had. I don't think we've gotten a good amount. I think we're 700 or 800 or so that have requested them. I don't think many have.
801.
Didn't know that.
I don't think we've really gotten much feedback back from those people saying it still wasn't enough. So at least from the feedback we're getting, it seems like it's being effective.
If we have less calls in the office too, about where are the cardboard dumpsters and what can I do with my overflow since we rolled out the program, which has been great on our staff as well.
Well, I believe with our large viewership, many people will become aware of this program now.
Well, members of the committee now know, and my name's going to go on that.
At least 15 more people know. Roger.
You can also email dpw@burlington.org with your address, and that'd be.
Do it right now.
You don't even have to.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a spreadsheet on my phone.
I will do it.
I believe you have something, Roger.
Oh, I was just going to make a pitch for don't order so much stuff that's in cardboard. It's up to all of us to reduce, not just figure out how to get rid of it more efficiently. End of green pitch.
I will drop off all the cardboard. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
To approve, Mr.
Any other important green messages? Thank you. All right, this is for the DPW trash removal accommodated account of $3,304,700. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain. That's 1400.
Chairman?
Yes?
Not a question.
This is more about water?
Advertising for the 8 people that are tuned in. A lot of communities, charge a trash fee above and beyond your taxes. So this is quite a benefit to the community. Don't complain about your taxes. Includes this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us. You should leave before Frank has more questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Why don't we, is anyone coming from Board of Appeals, or we're just doing it because it's straightforward, I assume?
Sounds at my house every other day.
Town Hall 2, for yet another year, cavalierly.
Go for it.
Let this one just come to the floor without a recommendation. So it's level funded, and in the amount of $13,731. Again, that's for a recording clerk and materials and supplies to go along with doing that. It is what it is.
Usually expect a more entertaining story from you, Brad. Okay. Do we have any questions on Board of Appeals?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Very good. All right. All right. This is budget 176, by the way. All right. This is for the Board of Appeals budget of $13,731. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain? All right. 1400. All right, next is town meeting and reports, which is account 113. Do we have a subcommittee report on that, David?
You got that, David?
We do.
Excellent.
It was a while ago that we met.
Last year.
On memory, then.
Right, it was last year because it's level funded. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, so the 2 categories, part-time, are the cost of running, and the contracted services for the annual reports, which we have to run a certain amount. So level funded, subcommittee voted to 0.
Okay. Do we have questions? I actually have one I have to ask.
Go for it.
There's a line item for the constable for $575. What did they do for that $575?
I'll be posted. Mr. Jenkins.
Is it more than posting that sheet of paper out on Town Hall, I hope?
No, it's not more than that, but it's required by law to do it, so they do their part by law. So they come and verify the warrant, and they post the warrant at a few different places for each town meeting.
Okay.
And who is the constable? Well, we elect the constable, don't we?
Right.
Maybe they could,
More than one, don't we have?
I should know, but anyway.
maybe they could fax it.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, had to say it. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, Megan, thank you. All right, this is to approve town meeting and reports, budget of $15,908. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? 1400. Very good. Thank you. All right, thanks for joining us, guys. Let's see.
Yes.
I think, so just looking forward, I just want to ask the emergency management budget, I know that that's being reworked. Is that going to be ready for next week, you think, Mike, or?
I think so. I just need to schedule a subcommittee meeting and post it. So I'll try to get that in before next week.
Okay, I'll put that on for next week then. And do we have anything for our debt update recurring item today?
No.
No? Okay.
No, we haven't even met with them in a while.
That's fine, it's a just-in-case item.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify.
Yeah.
At one point, we thought what we'd do is just get through free cash. We've already handled this year's existing and proposed debt. And I'm wondering if we should revisit this, large dashboard, 5-year, 10-year projection thing after town meeting, or do you want to make it part of this session? I don't know if John's left. I don't know if he's ready, but it's not going to bring any information to this town meeting, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it would be fine to do that after town meeting if you think it's something that we'd have better data on.
Yeah,
There's no need to rush through it, so.
We'll talk about that with him when we meet again, but that may very well be what we decide to do.
Okay.
Everybody knows what this is about, right?
I was going to ask, which dashboard is this?
Well, John did a fantastic job pulling together the calculator for excess levy capacity. As a completely separate thing, we were looking at, debt flow, dollars against the debt flow, where the levy's going, a whole bunch of things that give us sort of fingertips on what happens if you do this relative to taxes, relative to debt, that sort of thing. And that's a separate, it's a separate set of data and spreadsheets.
Okay.
The capital projects clearly get tied into that as well. So we really need a layer in that of at least a good 5-year capital outlook, best estimates we can get, kind of start to think more about this pacing and spacing of bonding, and get a dashboard to study that, an analytics. We had another name for it, I forget what it was, projections or something.
Projections.
Yeah.
We need to do some sensitivity.
We're working on that, and we will get there, and it'll be a great tool, certainly more than we've had. One other thing I should add, Mr. Chairman, Steve's not here. Schools, the warrant articles, the capital budget has met with schools, I know they have, and they've done a pretty detailed short-term update there. So I'm hoping that we can get an update from capital budget on the 5-year plan fairly soon. I really don't know the status of that. That would help us.
So, all I know is next week we'll be covering the capital warrant articles for school.
Right.
I haven't heard anything new in terms of their longer range plan.
Yeah.
You mean in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks?
Yeah. There's no meeting next week, is it?
I'm sorry. Our next meeting, hold on, let me just make sure. Yes, April 10th, I'm sorry, our next meeting, but 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, so that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
We've been here all alone next week. All right, so that's it for the debt update then. Our final thing is approval of the minutes. We're going to defer the March 13th minutes until our next meeting, just because we have a few edits to come in. I saw you sent something on that for us. So our last meeting was March 20th. I sent out an update at 2:20 this afternoon, and Doug had an additional suggested amendment or correction. Doug had spoken with the town moderator and town clerk regarding a potential conflict of interest that was not a potential conflict of interest. So not the town council. Just as a public service announcement, I'll just mention it. If anyone feels they do have a potential conflict due to a family member or business or whatever, you need to speak to your appointing authority, which is the town moderator in our case. So if the moderator approves, yeah, I don't see an issue here, then you're all clear. So with that, did we have any additional adjustments for the March 20th minutes beyond what I sent? Yes?
More question.
Yeah.
So I guess, and maybe it's my own fault for not paying more attention to minutes up until recently and just skimming them. But like, for example, this section that talks about the rescue ATV, we had some considerable conversation here and, back and forth. And I feel like, is the goal of these minutes to just summarize, or is the goal of the minutes to reflect the conversation that then happens afterwards? Because if I was just reading this, great little summary here, that's perfect. But then the warrant article, how we talked about, well, we didn't actually vote on it. We talked significantly about where we might stand on that.
Yep. So the general guideline for the minutes are they're not meant to be a transcription of what's happened by any means. It's not meant to be that level of detail. It's really just a high-level summary of key points. If you think there was some major point that was overlooked, that's certainly something that can be put in there, but by no means is it meant to be at the court transcription level. Yep.
And I know we're going to officially vote on it and have more conversation, but that was just as I was starting to look at these a little deeper, I wondered what our ultimate goal here for some of these are, because at times there's just the summaries, and then at times people are specifically called out for things that they had brought up, and just wondering at what level we want to be on record, especially when we're talking about the two data exclusions coming up, and making sure that our messages are very clear going forward with the town and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and just, this is my personal opinion, these minutes are about 3 pages long, and I'm looking at that's sort of the level of detail that feels appropriate to me. Other people may have, different ideas on that. So, certainly, if someone feels that's way off or we're missing something key there, definitely bring it up. But yeah.
This is only part of the public record. Since we have BCAT and those recordings, there is more detail there for people who are curious about every single detail.
Right.
Actually, I probably should not imply that BCAT is part of the public record, because it's not. It is available.
How long do they keep the meetings?
They haven't run out of this space yet. Mostly because I think they're on YouTube.
Yeah, I was killing myself looking for them, and then I finally stumbled on YouTube and discovered that's where you go to find them.
Yeah, it's a little weird. The past meetings are on YouTube, but current meetings are streamed via Facebook. So, but yeah, given...
You won't find them on BCAT proper itself.
No, but because they're on YouTube and Facebook. Right. But yeah, even though they're not, quote, official, given that one can go to recordings, if you really wanted to know everything we said here, that's certainly the best place to go, and certainly where I go when I'm forgetting something. So, anything additional on the minutes before we get a motion, hopefully?
Move to approve minutes of May 20th?
Thank you.
May 20th, March 20th.
March 20th. Had me fooled for a moment. Did we get get a second on that? No, thank you. Okay, those in favor of approving the March 20th minutes, raise your hand, please. I'm going to have to count here. All right, that's all but 2, I think. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain?
All right. All right, that's, all right, hold on. That's 3 of you. Got it. So Sonia, Chris Delaney, and Brad. You're right. Let's just, I think you're correct, Roger, but I'll use our automated system here. Yes, okay, that's.
I know you can count to 11.
I know, I don't want to, don't give it away. All right, that's 11:03. Thank you for keeping me honest, I appreciate it. Do we have anything additional that should be covered today? David?
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
So in looking at the schedule, we have no meeting next week.
Correct.
10th is more the education. Then we have the week off for school vacation, and then it's the remaining warrant articles, the ones that haven't been discussed. I think there's like 50 of them, right, this year. So we've discussed some already, but that's that. And then also the remaining accommodated accounts, negotiated settlements, capital improvements. So there's some also there. Is all that being encompassed for that date that I should be prepared for?
I think we did capital improvements already, the MIS capital improvements.
Yeah.
That was covered. So
Free cash and negotiated settlements, we've got.
Free cash discussion.
right, and so as you say, we don't have a meeting next week, but 2 weeks from now we do. At that meeting, we'll cover all the school warrant articles in addition to your budget. So I'll take care of the school warrant articles at least. But yeah, the remaining warrant articles are scheduled, I believe, for the week after that.
I think it's 24.
Yeah.
Around 15 of them.
Yeah, so
15?
Of the remaining ones, yeah. On the
So,
side.
my hope is our pre-discussions may speed that up. Maybe I'll have failed and it'll take twice as long, I don't know.
And then is there anything else on it? We have negotiated settlements, I know that.
Yeah.
So that's an
So we did that. So I'm just taking a quick look at the scorecard here. I think that will, negotiated settlements is the last thing in operating that's missing. And then the accommodated will actually be finished up with schools. So I believe it will just be warrant articles that are what's remaining after schools. So hopefully we'll cover them one night. If for some reason we can't, Mr. Denizio fortuitously started this process early, so we have a spare week or two to go over if it starts taking, if it appears like it's ridiculous to put all in one night, we'll schedule it over 2 nights and that should do it. So I'll go through that.
And we'll do our free cash discussion then.
Yeah, when you say then, you mean at the warrant article meeting? Yes, yes, if you'll be ready then, I'm assuming?
We'll make sure, I just want to make sure when it's.
Yes, please be ready then. Yes, that would be excellent. So that's, in particular, I think the goal was to have that before we talk about the warrant articles, as you had pointed out. Yeah, Roger?
Right, but you're going to talk about the school warrant articles on the 10th, presumably not vote on them the way we've been not voting on other warrant articles.
Yes, I think.
So then, when we are talking about voting on the warrant articles, it's going to be a complete list.
Yeah, good point. Well, let me ask this question. Is there any chance that we could have the free cash discussion available before the school discussion so that we could vote on those, or would that be too early?
Yeah,
we could.
If you think you could do that, I think that'd be beneficial, just so we don't stack up all the school articles also. Thank you for pointing that out.
They're coming in around 2.5 million, I think, they're asked.
Yeah, but we obviously want to have the big picture so that we
Right, but I think we could cover that with John.
Yeah, if he's ready to do that, I think that would be an excellent idea.
The final warrant will be available. It's available.
Yeah, there's no.
Next week, right?
Yeah, I think April 1st is what I was hearing.
We don't actually, the only reason you ever vote on free cash is if you want to put someplace that requires a vote.
Well, I don't think we're voting on free cash per se, but I think the point was by having the free cash capital budget plan,
Right.
then we can vote on the warrant articles in that context is the goal.
And we're also going to recommend a funding recommend.
Right. So in particular, it would be on
bonding something, and we're saying that we vote for free cash to spend it.
Right. So we have the bonding, we have the funding mechanism, and we also, will be confident that the total of them doesn't add up to more than the amount that you're recommending it add up to. Yeah, Roger. No, this is good. I appreciate you bringing this up.
Yeah, just one wrinkle in the free cash thing. I don't know whether there's this idea that some of the bondable projects, future bondable projects, I'll avoid using names here, would actually be partially covered with free cash. So I don't know how that comes into discussion without getting too concrete and getting off track.
I think I do. What we will do, have these discussions, if there's something we just flat out want to hold back because we see a bond 2 years out, and the department and the subcommittee think we would like to apply cash directly to that, then we would just leave it in free cash. That would be our recommendation.
Okay.
There'd be nothing to vote on other than we didn't spend it on something else.
Right. Just in terms of partitioning free cash, I think it needs to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, and this is a very unusual year because the size of the bonds and the number of them is a pretty big number, so, how much free cash might you intentionally just not use this year and even next year as a reserve? And we'll have that discussion, I'm sure.
Great.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else for tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Great. I believe we are adjourned.